Hey folks, thanks for stopping by to watch our video today. This is another video on reading, and even though the context here is about CELPIP, I'll discuss something that's essential even in real life. What is it? You'll find out soon. As you may have noticed, in CELPIP reading, as you progress, the readings and the questions get more difficult. And this is to be expected. And in Task 4, Reading for Viewpoints, you're given 13 minutes to solve 10 questions. Time is probably your biggest enemy here. Many students say they would do better if they had more time. The thing is, a time limit is also a way to measure the person's comprehension ability. Rather than jumping to a sample test, I want to talk about the skill that will help you ace your reading test and even help you with school or work in the future. And I'm talking about inferencing. So what is inferencing? Imagine the situation. You saw your close friend in the cafeteria. You say hi. But your friend didn't say anything back to you, even though you're sure you're loud enough for the person to hear. At that time, a normal person would think that something's wrong. Perhaps your friend was upset with you. That's why he or she didn't respond. When you have that thought, you are making an inference. So to make an inference is to make an educated guess based on the information we have and the observations that we made using our reasoning ability. You may not notice it, but it's something that we already do in our everyday life, except in the test, we're doing it when we're reading the passage. Another example. Look at this picture. What assumptions can we make that are likely to be true? Firstly, I think we all would agree that this is a picture of a man, and he is still young. Could be a student because he has a backpack, and it seems to be warm and cloudy because he is wearing a t-shirt. As far as the time, it could be in the morning or the weekend because the street looks very empty there. There's nobody else there. So what we just did there is also making inferences. Now that you know what an inference is, let's move on. In the exam, how do we choose the right answer? It is necessary that you understand the meaning of the sentence, not just the meaning of the words. One thing to note, when we are in a rush, we tend to do things quickly. So be careful when you see double negatives in a sentence. For example, when you see not insignificant or never true. Because the questions are multiple choice questions, eliminate as many wrong answers as possible to increase your chance of guessing the answer correctly. Going back to inferencing, here's a handy 3-step method that can guide you as you read the questions. Ask yourself these 3 questions in order. First, what does the sentence say? Second, what do I know? And third, so what? What conclusion can I draw from what it says and what I know? Even though the following type of questions are not in the CELPIP test, I want you to try practice with these questions. It may help you evaluate your reading ability. Before you check the answers at the end of the video, try to answer them yourself first. And later, you can tell me how you did in the comment section. Remember, practice makes perfect, so don't worry if you make mistakes because this is just a practice. Instead, I want you to try to learn as much as you can from the mistakes that you made. Here are my practice questions. I have 10 pairs of statements. What I want you to do is, for each pair, read the first statement and then try to determine whether the second statement is true or false based on what you read in the first statement. If you have a difficulty, try the 3-step method I just mentioned. Ask yourself what the sentence says, what you know from that sentence, and lastly, what conclusion you can make. Now, you can read the questions, pause the video, and it's time to practice. There are 10 questions in total, so we have 5 on the screen, and then we'll have another 5 in the next screen. So you can fast forward 10 seconds ahead to see the next 5 questions. Let's check our answers. Number 1. What does the sentence say? A lot of communities have begun to discover that their neighborhoods have been polluted by harmful substances from the factories nearby. And residents are always told pollutants are being dumped in their communities. So is this statement true or false? From the first statement, what do I know? Well, the residents have just begun to find out. That means they're not aware of the toxic substances before. Since they didn't know, it must mean that they were not told about the pollutants being dumped in their neighborhoods. So the answer is false. Number 2. The train problem between Bridgeport and YVR and Richmond Brickhouse stations forced travelers to transfer at Bridgeport station. It took more time for train riders to get to their destination. True or false? Well, we know that there was a problem and passengers had to transfer at Bridgeport station. If there's a problem, we could expect that there would be a delay. Of course, a delay means the travel time would be longer. So the second statement is true. 3. Quantum computers, a recent technological development in the 2000s, allow humans to solve a much more complex problem. And quantum computers will replace all existing computers in the future. True or false? From the statement, we learned that quantum computers are better. However, they most likely won't replace all computers in the future. Why? So we can try to use our reasoning skills here. There are a lot of electronic devices around us, but some of them are just simple devices. For example, our digital clock. Do you think we need to use a quantum computer to run a digital clock? I would say no. That would be a waste of resources, perhaps. Some simple rudimentary computers will probably continue to exist for certain purposes, just like the digital clock. For that reason, the second statement is false. Number 4. People who have lost their vision are still able to recognize objects by utilizing other senses. Blind people always need assistance from other people. True or false? The blind people still have other ways to recognize their surroundings. That should mean that in some cases, they will not need help from others. The answer is false. 5. His contribution to the company is not insignificant despite his involvement in the crime. He's guilty of crime, but he had done great things for the company. True or false? Notice the double negatives here. Not insignificant, which means it's important enough. He was one of the criminals, but he had done good things too. So the statement is true. 6. The death of the man was mourned by millions. The man was famous. True or false? This shouldn't be too hard. Millions of people felt a great sense of loss. Millions. That's a lot of people. From that, we can infer that the man was famous. Otherwise, a lot less people would have paid attention. 7. Homicide investigators publicly identified John as the suspect on Monday, saying that he only came to their attention 2 weeks ago. John was not a person of interest to the police at the beginning of the investigation. True or false? The authority, the police, had only noticed John 2 weeks ago. That supports our second statement. It means that the police previously was not interested in him. So the answer is true. The janitor who was found guilty of a murder seemed like a normal guy in the time between the victim's death and his arrest, according to a family friend. The janitor didn't show remorse for the crime he committed. True or false? The janitor was able to hide his crime and acted normally. From that, we could guess that the person didn't feel guilty. We would agree that murdering someone is a major crime, that it would be really difficult to hide our feeling if we committed such a crime. Therefore, I would say the statement is true. 9. The company should be compensated for the steps it must take when confronted with a court order from a movie company or other copyright holder for the name and address of a subscriber. The cost of enforcing the law should be shouldered solely by the company. True or false? So what do I know? Well, a compensation in this context is a payment made to make the company even after suffering a loss. Logically, we can say that the company should not be the only one paying for the costs. Other parties that are involved should also shoulder some of it. So the cost of enforcing the law should not be solely shouldered by the company. The last one. The US economy was already in a downturn when Lehman fell, but the ensuing crisis of confidence in the global banking system made things much worse. The fall of Lehman was the beginning of the recession in the US. True or false? Well, we know that the economy was already in a downturn before Lehman fell. So the fall of Lehman happened somewhere in the middle of the recession, not the beginning. That's why we will say the statement is false. Okay, so how did you do? Let us know how well you did and what you think of this type of questions. If you think this is useful, I'll post another video on inferencing, but instead of reading sentences, you will read paragraphs that are more similar to the test. Remember, to do well in the reading test, you need to make inferences. When you practice reading on your own, try to restate the ideas you obtain in your own words to test your understanding. And before we end this video, make sure you subscribe to our channel for the latest CELPIP strategies. Don't give up, because with practice, you will only get better.